I cannot name the person I discussed with. My discussion was about the possibility of raising $1 trillion US, right? And the answer that I got was from Temasek that that's not a problem at all. With Singapore's AAA financial, we can mobilize any amount of money. The only issue is, do we have enough people or capable people or trustworthy people who know how to use the money effectively? So this is the critical problem. So it boils down to the mindset problem. Unless we have a new generation of young people or older people who are capable of mobilizing capital and technology and working with the Southeast Asian counterparts, we are going to be a bit behind time. So this is the question, right? So the speakers that we have brought together, like for example, Mr. Balji, it would be very important for him to talk about how does the media, right, the newspapers, the electronic media and so on, how do we use the media to kind of reopen the Singaporean mind, right? It's really the issue is mind versus media, okay? Then we have Melvin Tan, who will be talking about the Swiss model, because one of the propositions we put forward in the last session is that Singapore's 5 community development councils should be turned into 5 local governments. That means there will be 5 HDBs, 5 URAs, 5 MOEs, and let them decide on their own what sort of policy they want to exercise, and let them compete with each other who can do better. And then I have Mr. Yee Jenn Jong, who is going to talk about at the grassroots level, at the operational level in the community, what actually happens? How do you get people to come out of their shell and to think creatively? Then we have Swee Yong here, who is a real estate expert, right? He and I have, and together with Yeo Lam Kiong, has worked on a proposal about how we can change the financial model of the HDB, particularly for the young people, so that the young people don't get into a debt trap. Because once they are in the debt trap, right, they have to pay huge amounts of money to own their flat, right? They will be very afraid to do anything, right? And then of course we have who's the other person? Yeah, and also if Han Shi can join us and make some comments about the Hong Kong situation, that will be very, very helpful, Han Shi. Yeah. So thank you all very much. Please kick off with Balji.
Or maybe while Balji is sorting out, JJ, and go first.
Oh, okay. I mean, if Balji doesn't mind, let me go first. And okay, let me just share screen. You all can hear me, right?
Yeah, hold on. Let me just take the pin away from. Okay.
Okay, so yeah, basically I'm asked to talk about how we can open up and get people to be more participative. So I chose the topic of active volunteerism and international mindset. So hi, my name is Yee Jenn Jong. Some of you may know me as a former NCMP, still with the Workers' Party. So some of the maybe more unknown part of me is that I also author books. I an entrepreneur, and I'm also pretty much as a active volunteer, which I hope to share some of my experience from there. Okay. Initially, I was asked to talk about activism, but I don't think I'm qualified to talk about activism because I don't consider myself an activist. Yeah, maybe people have a misconception that politicians are activists. Usually, while we do have some causes that we want to champion a little more, like for me, it would be more in education, early childhood, as well as for the SMEs and so on. But when we're in Parliament, we basically need to be all-rounded and push a wide agenda, different issues, and also to basically coordinate as a party. So I decided to ask permission to talk about volunteerism instead, which is basically how we can start from the ground up, how we can involve volunteers to come out into the serve in the community and in other areas. So allow me to spend just a couple of minutes to talk about my own journey in volunteerism. I didn't start off wanting to be volunteers here and there because when I was in primary, secondary schools, I was actually very small size and pretty much very timid. So in secondary school, I accidentally joined the St. John's Ambulance. Why did I say accidentally? I really joined the library, and which is a very passive CCA, and I thought that everyone must join a uniform group. So I picked what I thought would be the more something that I can manage. I joined St. John's Ambulance, and somehow, yeah, in the process of doing so, every year we go through certain exams to see who can qualify to move up the leadership track. Although I didn't score very well in commanding people because I was pretty much timid, but then because there was the exam component, the written components, which I scored very well. And so every year I get promoted. Eventually I became a sergeant. And because of that, I ended up being a leader and actually opened up a lot of my confidence, having to fulfill leadership role. Yeah. And when I went to college, I even ended up with 5 CCAs, including being the student council, all because I couldn't refuse friends who chose me to go and join this, join that, to take part in the council election, which I did and somehow got elected in and so on. So yeah, which is why from my own experience in school, thankfully my academics didn't get affected. In fact, even with more involvement, I became more confident about myself, and I did fairly well in my in school, and I got a scholarship after that. So even when I went on with all that experience in volunteerism and all these activities, I went on to become a St. John's Ambulance officer during my national service free time. Then later a Boys Brigade officer, and I sat on committees all across, whether it's in social or church or work or alumni or government. And I started actively writing to forum pages, both in local and international media. I had letters published twice in Times magazines when I was young. So that led to my belief that academics, schools and all that shouldn't, the school life itself shouldn't be all about academics. If you ask me today, I remember a lot of the interesting things we did in all these extra activities, more so than what I did in my studies. I developed my character, confidence, as well as this willingness to volunteer. Why did I show this picture of Bhutan? In 2011, this is just one example of the many things I volunteered for. 2011, there was an education mission to Bhutan. I volunteered to be there. So it was quite interesting. And who knows that 2 years later, I was actually invited by the government of Bhutan to be the consultant for the ICT planning and education for the 5-year master planning. And over there, I met the most famous Western artist. And yeah, from there, I basically invited the next year, I actually organized for a group of them to come to Singapore. I managed to get some sponsor. I'll count that as some kind of volunteerism activities. Nobody paid me to get anything done. I didn't get anything out of it, but I just felt interesting to be able to build up this network with artists in Bhutan and to see them being able to sell their art in Singapore and to share their perspective with Singaporeans. These are some of the current volunteerism activities I'm doing. You see the big truck there. It's part of this group that a few of us started slightly over 2 years ago called the Red Collective. It started over dinner, a casual dinner before CNY, Chinese New Year, 2 years ago.
JJ, can I interrupt you here?
Yeah, sure.
About I mean, you made a good point about volunteerism as a vehicle of developing your own self, right? And your ability to overcome your shyness when you were young, right? What is your view about the state of volunteerism in Singapore right now among the young people?
Oh, okay. Thanks for asking that question. I was actually going to share a little in this and the next slide because for example, this Red Collective activity, it is actually a daily collection of donated and rescued vegetables and food. And because it's daily, we need to mobilize a lot of people. We have more than 100 volunteers Even as I speak right now, there's a group that's collecting vegetables at Pasir Panjang. Today is a Friday, so I think they go to different community points. Some of
How
it is
many of this group are young people?
okay. So I was coming to that. Yeah, we have generally older people, but through this volunteer process, I have actually people in the school's age coming to join. I actually shared in my Facebook once that there was this group of them from Victoria JC and a few other JCs. One of them actually was doing this volunteering in her year 2. And one of the days I realized that she actually just got out of COVID. And then she was there helping me move all this veg and all that. And so she continued after her A-levels and so on. I still do have some, but yeah, maybe not enough. Most of our volunteers tend to be people who already have time because maybe they have slowed down in their work or they somehow can manage their work. But I do encourage young people to come out, and the situation is not that bleak. We do have young people from secondary, college, and some waiting for their to enter university, or we have even guys doing their national service coming to help them.
I think
Yeah.
this is an issue which I think we need to develop to discuss a little bit more, because obviously the younger people need to be a lot more involved in public affairs. But
Okay.
maybe because the schoolwork and the school demands and the tuition and all of these things are so demanding that they have no time for anything else. So
Okay.
this is a structural issue which I think we should address somehow in the discussion.
Yeah, good point. Later in the last slide, I'll be talking a little about education system and what we can try to change in the mindsets. Yeah. But just to share also, many of these volunteerism activities, we also did not want it to be such that we are the one who organize it and we go there and, for example, giving food. It's very easy to, I'm not saying very easy, but you know, one of the tendencies that people think that, oh, all these recipients, they must, we must give to their doorsteps and so on. So I want to share this example of something that was sparked up on the ground because right at the start of COVID, day 1 of COVID in April 2020, all the food distribution was stopped in the community. So I was asked if I wanted to do it in Marine Parade. So I said, okay. So we had one ground volunteer who was able to do it over there. And then we want to make sure that the program must be sustainable. The volunteers themselves are not just recipients. They must also end up taking charge of the program. So I'm glad to say that our daily, mind you, is daily breakfast distribution has been running on 365 days a year since day 1 of COVID in 2 locations, right, in Eunos and Marine Parade. No stop, not during Chinese New Year, Hari Raya, Deepavali, Christmas, New Year Day. It goes on, right? And the only reason it can be done is because the volunteers on the ground do it. And sometimes we get support from other people, volunteer group, because the volunteer network, once they know that you have a network, like you see this in the center, there's this 2 gentlemen. They're actually not part of our group. They're part of a cycling group, Bike for Food or Bike for Charity. They actually raise funds doing bicycle rides and all that. And then they will buy items and all that. And during Deepavali especially, or Hari Raya, they will give special food to us. So these are, again, ground-up initiatives. Yeah, but you can see that most of them are not young people. Yeah. So my volunteerism activities involve, like sometimes when I get moved to do certain things. When I first heard about this Singapore migrant worker who survived a 70% burnt, took his compensation money after a long fight with our legal system, went back to Bangladesh. Instead of living a good life for himself, he decided to set up a school in his village, running at a loss every month, right? So that he can bring hope and education to his village. So at one stage when he contacted my wife actually and said that, oh, he was trying to look for an opportunity to come back to work so that he can earn money to send back there. I said, hey, wait a minute, let me organize some fundraising activities. So he came back to Singapore. We organized for Mothership and Lian He Cao Bao to feature him. Through that, we managed to raise funds. Separately, we talked to people to raise funds to try to get the school going. I'm happy to say that there's 200 over students running there. Even though he's not a trained educator, his passion is there to make it work. And yeah, all the more, myself and a group of people want to continue to help that. And why did I show a picture of a tiger here? Next week, I'm actually going to Bangladesh, into the mangrove forest of Bangladesh. Partly through this connection with Raman, but not because I wanted to visit Raman, but also because I also wanted to, at the same time, visit the largest mangrove forest in the world, which happens to be in Bangladesh and India. And then I was somehow linked to a group that does tiger conservation. Yeah, so wish me luck. I'll be in the tiger enclosure and all that in the nature in Bangladesh about 2 weeks from now. Okay, and
Okay.
again, it's like we are trying to help them. And these are some other activities with orphans and schools in West Kalimantan. We do some art for the senior citizens to keep them mentally alert. Okay, so I think I'll move on to really talk about some of these issues I want to bring up. So I want to encourage what active volunteerism might help bring up in you. For myself, being active in volunteerism, and is even among many of the volunteers we have, including young people, many of them did say that they're not aware that actually in the community there are so many people in need, because somehow we don't see them. There are still a lot of poor people. We give our food mostly to the community. And oh yeah, by the way, if any of you after this feel like you want to volunteer in our food distribution and helping in any of these programs I mentioned, feel free to contact me directly. We do need lots of volunteers. It helps broaden the mindsets, and of course for me, it keeps my mind and body active. I have to drive the truck, I have to load up vegetables, and our volunteers who are there to help to load up, and we have a network of network of drivers as well, who are all volunteers, professionals. We include lecturers, entrepreneurs, or that driving trucks, 14-footer truck. But I also say that in networking with all these like-minded people, it's like connecting the dots, like Steve Jobs said. You never know when the dots will become useful, and some of them became business contacts for other things. But I know for some people, I talked to some activists who are considered activists in Singapore. They never started by wanting to be activists, but some of them were alarmed by some of the issues, maybe with foreign workers or with the poor and all that. And he led them in this, being active volunteers, led them to then become some activists pushing for the cause, because unfortunately, we can't always leave things to the government. Sometimes the ground-up initiative is important to get things moving. And I think today's topic is building an international mindset, challenging and changing the Singaporean mindset, right? So, so I just want to leave with some thoughts over here, and then I think we can take more questions when it's in the Q&A time, so that I can pass on to the next speaker. So one is that you might ask, why change mindset? What's wrong with the Singapore mindset? I mean, sometimes we ask ourselves, having we succeeded in the past 60 or 60 plus years? So we need to ask, can it continue to bring success? Like Prof. Tay mentioned at the beginning, that we have been very disciplined by LKY, so disciplined that we don't dare to step out of our comfort zone, step out of things that we are known or we are told to do, right? So we're not allowed to discuss things that are taboo. So that has, I mean, in my opinion, stifled some of the prospect that Singapore could play, going forward, because unfortunately, we can't be training people just to work for MNCs or for the government, right? We have to think beyond that, how to venture up. And if you are not wanting to break out of our comfort zone, then it's a little hard to do anything very great in the international scene. So we can think of how can Singapore play a key role in Asia, given that we have a lot of relative strength. For example, Prof. Tay talked about raising funds, our AAA rating, and so on, our relative safeness, and people wanting to set up their HQ here. Okay, but what has all this got to do with volunteerism? All right, so I want to leave you a thought that for me personally, being active has helped to change my own mindset, become a more confident person. I've seen that also with some of the volunteers we have, some of the younger volunteers that Prof. Tay was wanted me to talk about. I've seen some of them say that, yeah, they're unaware that there are some of these issues. I've talked to some of the more known activists in Singapore. And as I mentioned, they started volunteering with some of the ground up initiative. Then they realized the horrors that actually there's a lot of things that we never knew. For example, how migrant workers may be treated. Like if I didn't get very close with Rahman and realizing that the struggle he had to, after he got burned and almost died, how he almost like cannot get compensation, was like the case was tried to be brushed off and so on. And then I realized that, wow, how hard these people have to work, like 12 to 14 hours every day and that kind of things. Yeah, so you start to realize that actually there's quite a lot of things that needs to be changed. So active volunteerism do end up changing our mindset about things. It helps us get out of our comfort zone, get out of what we are told that things are like perfect and so on. So maybe I'll just leave it with this thought and then I'll pass on to the rest. Then I can continue back again later in the Q&A.